We are about to get started here. Looks like we have a bunch of people trickling in today. So if you can hear my voice, please go ahead and tell us where you're calling in from or dialing in from or watching from in the chat, as well as whether or not you are a Mucker portfolio company. And then we're going to get started in just another minute or so, just to give latecomers a chance to get settled in, turn on the audio, things like that. But again, if you can hear my voice, go ahead and let us know where you're from in the chat and whether or not you are a Mucker portfolio company. And we will get started now. Okay, while you're doing that, welcome to today's monthly growth series sessions with Mucker. Today's session is on setting up a founder-led organic LinkedIn content machine with Claude. We had an alternate title as well, but basically our guest speaker today is very well versed in this area. I've been following him for a while with his newsletter, which we can mention in a second. But before we go into the actual content, let me address a few housekeeping items first. A couple of things. Yeah, if we could move to the next slide. Housekeeping. Okay. We always say this at the beginning. Everyone always asks this first question in all the webinars in the history of webinars, which is, are we recording this webinar and will it be available? The answer is yes. So we are recording it and we've been getting better at turning things around. So you can expect it to be published on Mucker's blog probably by sometime tomorrow, if not at the very latest over the weekend or on Monday. If you want to keep up to date, just make sure you're subscribed at mucker.com. And for us, we don't really believe in a lot of gated content. So this full recording, as well as the slides, Jonathan is kind enough to provide it to the audience. They will be posted on Mucker's blog without a form that you have to fill out or anything. So the whole thing will be there. Rest assured, definitely take notes, pay attention, but the full thing will be available. And then secondly, we have both the webinar chat box as well as the Q&A box. Definitely feel free to put comments and interact with each other in the chat. But if you have any specific questions for myself or the guest speaker, put it in the Q&A box because the chat gets really noisy and we want to make sure we keep track of questions. So if you have questions at any point in time, make sure you put it into the Q&A box, okay? All right, let's get started. Let me do a quick introduction. If you are new and joining us for the first time, my name is Tony. I run the growth practice at Mucker, which just basically means I spend a lot of time working directly with the founder in our portfolio. And Mucker, we are an early stage venture fund or venture firm. We invest in seed to Series B. We also run an accelerator program that you can participate in remotely. So you don't have to be at one of our office locations in LA, Texas, or LA, Austin, or Toronto. If you are in one of those locations, great, you could work out of one of our offices. But essentially, accelerator that we call Mucker Lab, and we are an early stage fund. So you can find out more information on the Mucker website. But really, I'm super excited to introduce our guest presenter for today, Jonathan Martinez. He's the founder and CEO of Growth Pair. They are actually one of Mucker's perk partners. So if you are a Mucker portfolio and need help with talent, they are a talent agency, and he could tell you more a little bit about that. But definitely, if you are in the market to hire team members, Jonathan would be a great resource. But today, he's not necessarily talking about talent. We invited him to talk about building a content machine using Claude. He has a newsletter that he runs that I've been subscribed to for a little bit of time. That's how I connected with him. And just, he didn't ask me to do this, but I'm plugging his newsletter. Go and sign up for it. Jonathan, what is the name of your newsletter?
Let me just unmute here. Hey, everyone. Name of the newsletter is The AI Marketer on Substack.
Yeah, you're a little bit choppy, but hopefully that resolves itself. But yeah, definitely follow him and subscribe because great content that he produces on AI Marketer, right? Is that what it is? AI Marketer?
The AI
Okay.
Marketer. Does that sound better
Yes,
now? Am I still
you're
choppy or are
less
we
choppy
good?
now. Awesome.
Okay.
So cool. Jonathan, I'm super excited to have you. I know you got a lot of great content to cover, so I'm going to hand it over to you. And definitely anybody in the audience, if you have questions, type them in there. We'll try to answer them as best we can. But Jonathan's got a lot to cover, so it's all yours, man.
Sweet. First off, Tony, thanks for having me. Really excited to dive into all things founder-led content, and specifically founder-led content and leveraging Claude to build a content machine. I was looking at the chat and then I saw we're pretty global. I saw some folks out of London. I'm in Los Angeles. I saw some of those as well, all across. So good to have you all here. And so what we're going to be covering is there's a couple items before I actually get into the Claude content machine that I've built, which is why founder-led content is so important. I'm assuming a lot of you already in here know that founder-led content is important, which is why you want to learn how to scale that. But I'm going to mention a couple of the reasons if you're not completely sold just yet. And then also just some of the best practices that I've learned from my posting on LinkedIn over the last 2.5 years. Then after we are finished with those two blocks and some of the teasing there, we'll get into the Content Machine 2000, which is what I've called it, and show how I built it over a weekend. Before diving into all of that, though, just want to give a little bit of background on myself. So dating back to '08 was when I first got into the world of content creation. I was actually a YouTuber, and this was the days of early MacBooks, not to age myself, but early MacBooks with the iSight camera and iMovie being the rage. And that's really what powered my first couple hundred videos on YouTube. I ended up scaling that account to 50,000 subscribers and about 40 million total video views when it was all said and done. And from there, that led me into my career as a marketer at primarily tech companies while I lived in San Francisco. I headed up different functions of growth at companies like Uber, was at Chime, Coinbase, et cetera, and really just taught me the tricks of the trade when it came to all things marketing. And while I was at those companies, I was always sharing my learnings through Substack. I was a writer for TechCrunch for a handful of years. And then most recently, over the last 2 years on LinkedIn. I also, as Tony mentioned, the founder of Growth Pair. We help companies with their global marketing talent. That's what I've been building over the last 2.5 years. And a lot of what's allowed us to scale to what we've scaled is founder-led content. So we're going to kick off on why start today or why start yesterday, right? Like why it's so important to be running founder-led content. I even wish that I would have started sooner, but when you think you're ready and want to start building an audience, I say it's already too late. It's never early enough. And I think starting to write, the sooner the better, is always best practice here and something that I would recommend. So if it's one thing you take away from all of this and you're not already doing founder-led content, just start writing some posts this week on LinkedIn.
Looks like we just lost him. It's never happened to us before. Hopefully he'll be able to rejoin. Anyhow, while we wait for him, why don't we do a little bit of interaction with the group here? Something that I find a lot is founders, if you guys are using some interesting tricks or different things to help you with content, go ahead and share them in the chat. Jonathan's back. Great.
I'm so sorry. I don't know why we disconnected
No
there.
worries.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, you're gonna have to turn on your screen share again. But in the meantime, while we're waiting for you to get back, I asked everyone to share
Yes.
any tips or tricks that they've been doing just to get some founder engagement going or attendee engagement. I know not everyone attending is a founder. Okay. You
I
still
will
there,
share
Jonathan?
my screen here. Yep, just getting to the screen again.
Okay.
So sorry about that.
No, it's all good. Someone's saying is the audience, do you have a kid that's gaming right now, hogging up all your bandwidth? But knowing you,
No, no kids.
probably your agents
It's
are
funny.
running and taking up all the CPU.
Claude is overtaking the computer there. But yeah, where was I at? I think we're here. So just
Yeah.
again, case for day one. And I just want to make sure everyone can hear me okay.
Yep. You're good so
Just want to
far.
make sure I set the mic to, I'll probably have to adjust that once the mic connects again. But anyway, audience takes time, right? I've been doing this for 2.5 years. I've gone from 0 to 30,000 followers in that time, but it was not a straight line up over the course of call it months. It's taken years to build up that audience. And so again, it goes back to why I had mentioned so important to just start writing the content. It's also just such a cheap acquisition vehicle. And I'm going to get into this, and the whole sort of premise with it today is how I've scaled a growth pair with zero in spend to 1 million in annual revenue. You'll see that Forbes article behind me. That was actually something that I was featured in within the last year. That's exactly about this, which is scaling without a marketing spend. And buyers are also just primed. Once you have their attention on your social channels, they have been primed, and it's a lot easier to close a deal when they trust you and you've built that trust with the content that you're posting. So again, 2.5 years of posting and what that's looked like. And it looks like my camera is having some issues here. So I'm so
Okay.
sorry, everyone, but we'll see if it goes back live. But as long as you all can hear me,
Yep.
the last 2.5 years of posting, I've been able to get up to nearly about 1 million impressions per quarter. And again, scaled my startup to 1 million in annual revenue in that time with very little to no ad spend. This is what it looks like. And I wanted to post this not for proof, but more so to showcase that the posting and the content that you publish is a culmination of many posts, many at bats. It's not one post that goes viral. That's a straight line. And you'll see over the last 90 days here in this chart that it's a constant line up with all of the posts that I've been publishing. But you'll see here, beginning of August, I did have a little bit of a spike. That was because one of the posts did go viral around that time. And then I'm going to just share a couple of the best practices before we start the screen share and showcase some of what I built and also how to build. I'm also trying to toggle the camera on here, but it's not being kind to me today. Hopefully it goes back on. But starting with practice number one. So I can't stress this enough. If it's a second piece that you take away from today, it's write everything yourself. When I was building the Claude, the content machine that we'll get into, I had initially built it with some writing capabilities. And I found out right away that it was just stripping my voice away. I wasn't unique anymore. And it's just going to get lost in the sea of AI content if you're using Claude or, say, ChatGPT to write your pieces. The other big thing that I've learned is that you do need to have a couple of content pillars that you are posting, and so that you're known for that. And to give an example here, my content pillars revolve around AI and marketing. So I think Tony had actually found my newsletter potentially through like some of the Claude training. And so that became a huge pillar for me. And I wanted to be known for these so that when folks would go to my profile, they knew the type of content that they were going to be getting on their feeds and what they would be learning. The other, and something that I actually got wrong early on, was I thought that every piece of content had to be unique. It had to be something that was that some idea that I had thought of that morning or that week, and every single post had to be that. But I was completely wrong, because within a couple of weeks of that or a couple of months, I was out of my own ideas. And so a lot of what content is, and I think this will hopefully help many that are on this journey, is that your content doesn't need to be completely net new. In fact, most content isn't net new from what on the web. It's typically someone finding something on their feed and then providing their twist and their angle on it. And that's what makes for great content, is having your voice and your twist on what you're already seeing out there.
Jonathan, what would you say is your posts? What percentage of your posts are original versus a take on someone else's post?
I'd say that it's like an 80-20 split. So about 80% of content are takes from other items that I'm seeing across the web. 20% is net new. I think that anyone that says otherwise and that is flipped 80% net new, they're either not being truthful or potentially just super geniuses, creative minds. But most of the content is actually just spins on other things that I'm seeing on the web.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And a big hack that I've implemented with content as a way to increase the reach is using thought leader ads on LinkedIn. And so if you've scrolled LinkedIn and you've seen those organic looking posts that have promoted by right below the name of the individual, those are thought leader ads. And they look super organic because it's not a company logo, it's an individual's logo. So it's like their post from their account. So in this case, my account. And then I boost the post to my ICP. And what's great about this is that because it looks organic, the engagement is really high. I'm typically seeing 20 to 30% click-through rates on these. And if you were to compare that to a standard static ad on LinkedIn from a company page, you're looking at closer to 1% click-through rate. So it's a massive difference. There are pluses and minuses to it, but overall, thought leader ads are a great way to continue to get in front of your ICP with content that's already working well. And I always recommend to boost the posts that have done well organically because that's the best sign that you can get that it's going to work well when you boost it with paid spend.
Let me ask a quick question. I think someone's also asking about this. So the content that
Yeah.
you're posting organically and then boosting, or just posting organically as a whole, are you doing it on your own personal LinkedIn profile or are you doing it on your company's profile or both?
This is on my personal account. So I actually don't spend a dollar on the company account. Those ads typically have really poor engagement rates. People will scroll past them. They know what an ad is on LinkedIn versus
Yeah.
maybe a thought leader post. And so all of the thought leader ads are being boosted on individual posts, whether they're my posts or posts from the advisors at my company or even customers. Those all get boosted because they lead to much higher engagement.
Got it. Are you doing any posts on your company page at all?
Yes, but not a huge amount. Like with my last startup, it was 80-20 split, 80% of the posts going to the company account, 20% to my own personal account.
Yeah.
With this startup over the last 2.5 years, I've flipped that. And maybe even more. Maybe it's 95-5, like not many posts going out of the company account. And we
Mhm.
have 5, 10,000 followers on there, but engagement is just not as good as a founder led account.
Yeah.
There's so many great cases of this when you look at like the founder of Airbnb as an example. Whenever
Mhm.
he posts like their summer release for Airbnb or an update on X, he gets 10x the engagement of the official Airbnb account with the same exact update. So it's people want to engage with people on these accounts. Good questions. By the way, Tony, do you think it makes sense to pause to try to get my camera back on, or do we want to just keep rolling
No,
with the
let's keep
show?
going because yeah, I want to make sure
Okay.
that we have enough time to cover the good stuff.
Okay. I'm still a black screen I see on my side. Video's
Yeah,
on.
it's okay.
Okay. The show goes on. So last practice here is on the actual engagement that you're getting on your content. I always say it's not enough. I always thought at the beginning that it was enough to just post and then turn LinkedIn off for the rest of the day. But a lot of the content and pipeline that you build from that content is actually in the comments section. And so engaging with your ICP in the comments section, it's the whole reason we post at the end of the day is to spark conversation, right? Because if we posted to just post, then there'd be no fun in that. And so there's a lot of time that I spend in the comments section and then turning those comments into DMs with those that I've had multiple conversations with or an interesting convo that I then want to turn into a direct message, which then leads to eventual pipeline for your business. So I think that's enough teasing, and we can get into the content machine. And Tony, did you have something? I think I saw you unmute or you're. Good on
No,
your side? Okay,
yeah,
okay.
let's
I
keep
didn't know
going.
if there's another question before we jump into this. Okay.
Yeah.
What I'm going to do is actually switch over to a screen share. And I think that's what the majority have come to see, which is what I built to automate a lot of this. I'm actually already on the screen share, so I'm just going to move over to the Content Machine 2000, which you'll see is hosted on a subdomain of my company website. You don't need to do this, and I'm going to get into a more MVP way. But I essentially wanted to build out a system on here that would automate a lot of the manual work that I was doing without automating anything that I thought was important to keep very manual, which again is the writing, which is the engagement, and just showing up and being a human on these platforms. But what I built, and the first feature that I built in all of this was the pane that you're seeing here, which was a daily digest and a briefing on. And by the way, you're going to see a demo on the left-hand side. I've just toggled that on so that there's no private information being shared, albeit there's not much of it, but I just wanted to make sure better to be safe than sorry here. But yeah, so on this daily briefing, I wanted to get a high-level bird's eye view on the type of content that's resonating on LinkedIn in my content pillars and the content that I post, and maybe angles that I can be taking and type of content that I can be writing, because so much of founder-led content and so much of the problem that I see other founders have is just writer's block, having an issue with ideation. And so I wanted to solve that because I personally was having that pretty much every day. And other than if I was, say, scrolling LinkedIn for hours and then I would find ideas, I wanted to automate that portion. And so that's what this briefing does. It also alerts me on how much of my audience are within my ICP. And I'm going to do a more deep dive on this because that's a whole nother feature in and of itself. A lot of these are actually single features in the left-hand side pane, but this just gives me a high level look at everything. And what I really like here is this section that gives me the uncovered type of content that I should be writing about that maybe other creators in my space are writing. Now, I'm not going to go through the entire dash because that would definitely run us over the time, but I do want to go through a couple of the big features on here and then get into how I built this and how I would recommend going about this on your side.
So Jonathan,
What
just
I have,
if we
sure,
could just provide a little bit of context for the audience. So this is a tool that you built for yourself internally, right? So,
correct.
all right,
This
okay.
is this is an internal tool. It's not being sold anywhere or a SaaS subscription. This is just
Sure.
bespoke to what we're doing here.
And did you just vibe code this using Claude Code, or what did you?
Correct.
Yeah.
This was all done on Claude Code. I'll share the exact stack after some of the screen share here, but correct. It's primarily all built through Claude Code.
Okay, cool.
Sweet. Good questions. And yeah, so on the dashboard, this isn't something that I'm looking at every day, but it is a good breakdown on how my content is doing and gives me an idea on like when the best days and times are to post. And I can scroll down and show a little bit more. It's also giving me insights into the length of posts and how well those do, some of my recent posts, and it just gives me kind of a bird's eye view on analytics. More importantly is actually this drill down, this deep dive on my top posts. And I'm actually going to cover some of this later, which is repurposing content that does well. It's a huge low-hanging fruit that I think more creators should be doing, which is essentially taking your top posts and reposting it. And I'll get more into that and why later, but this gives me a look at my top posts over the last half year, and as an example, you'll see this one here had 5,000 comments, around 200 reposts, and then there's the full list if I were to scroll down. What's so important, and one of the mistakes I made with founder-led content early on was I was actually optimizing for the wrong metrics. I like to call them vanity metrics, which are just likes and even comments to an extent. Instead, I started to optimize for, out of all of those that are commenting and actually engaging with my content, how many belong in my ICP? And that way I had an idea on what I should be posting about, what was resonating most, and what my ICP was interested in. Because at the end of the day, that's who you want to get in front of, right? As a startup founder, you want to get in front of potential prospects that could find your solution valuable. And this was really important. And it's something that I keep an eye on. You'll see that some posts even get zero, but some of the top ones are between 10 and 15, 25%. This is an insight tab. Then I've got my topic balance, which gives me some context on the topics that I'm writing about, how much I've written, and what the engagement looks like for those. And if anything, I hope this sort of screen share session gives you inspiration on what you can potentially add. I think that everyone's content machine should be different and it should be bespoke to your use case. And I've even adjusted this machine over the course of the last 6 months and tailored it to exactly what I needed. And I'll actually showcase some of the features that I've built even over the last week, which is in this listen tab. And I'm going to skip over the newsletter portion because that's actually a piece that I use for my Substack that's built into this machine. But I know that we're more focused on LinkedIn today. But within research, this is what saves me hours every week. It is looking into all of the posts on LinkedIn in my vertical, which is AI marketing, and giving me the posts that are getting engagement, that are getting attention from others, and giving me ideas and inspiration on what I can be writing about. And so you'll see here that there's quite a bit of posts, and I can run this at any point, this research. I can also refresh, and it'll just refresh all the tabs. And there are multiple ways to refresh the content on here, but I just have it set so it's automatically doing that daily. And then I've got trends, but what I wanted to share, and I'm going to gloss over these, but the latest feature I added actually within the last week is this leaderboard, which I thought was something that I could use to see how I'm stacking against other creators that are writing about AI and marketing. And namely, not because it's a race, but it does give me a look at like how I'm faring against some of the best creators on LinkedIn. And it also, more importantly, gives me a look into, okay, this profile is getting tons of engagement. I should dive into what they're writing about because obviously they're doing something that's working and the type of content that's resonating well. So you'll see I'm closer or near the bottom there with 100 followers added within the last few days. You'll see that this probably doesn't change much because it's only been running for 3 days. So it's the same data for 3 days ago. But I can also go into each of these profiles and get an idea on the latest content that they're writing, along with just going straight to their profile to get a look into maybe what's working well for them. And then I've also added a chart into here along with trends on what they're writing about. So two creators are writing about this. Maybe it's something that I should be writing about as well. This is
Hey,
actually
go
one of my
ahead.
more favorite. Go ahead, Tony.
Oh no, finish your thought because I have a question about this.
No, was just going to end off by saying it's one of my more favorite features I've added into the
Okay.
platform, into this tool.
Cool. There's a few people asking the same question, which is how are you connecting to LinkedIn? Because LinkedIn doesn't have an MCP, no actual connector
Mhm.
with Claude. So assume you connecting it to through the API.
There's a third-party tool that I use called Apify,
Got it.
and I love where everyone is headed with these questions. I'm going to cover some of that along with the full stack after screen sharing here, but that's correct. It is something that LinkedIn guards pretty well, so you do have to use third parties. And also, I just wouldn't risk accounts being suspended by using your own account to do any of this.
Yeah. And then for
So I'll
you,
get into some of that.
Mucker, thank you for that. And for
Mm.
you, Mucker portfolio companies that are listening, we do have a partnership with Apify. Look into the founder portal for that. But yeah,
Oh, there you
great.
go.
Thank you.
Yeah, big fan of what they're doing, and they allow you to do this not only across LinkedIn, but allow you to run scraping on a variety of other social platforms. And it powers a lot of what you're seeing here today.
Cool.
The other piece, and I know I said that I took out most of the features that did net new writing. And that's true other than this feature here, which is spinning content that I've already written that's performed really well and coming up with different hooks and pieces of copy based on what's worked. It doesn't completely rewrite what I've already originally written. It'll just come up with new ideas on types of hooks that I can use, which is 80% of the battle on LinkedIn. You want to get people to click that show more so that you get engagement. And so it's a big reason I added this hook bank, which looks at all of my hooks and gives me an idea on the type of hooks that work well, whether it's bold claims or observations, personal stories. And sometimes I just reuse these because they've worked in the past. So might as well not reinvent the wheel, but just work with what I've already built out. And a couple other features here like narrative arcs I mentioned earlier, which were the pillars, right? And writing content and sticking to a handful of pillars. So this keeps me honest because it gives me a bird's eye into when the last time it was that I wrote about building an AI native team or fighting AI marketing slop, and allows me to become the thought leader on these narrative arcs and these pillars. I'm going to gloss over the lookalike content. And the last piece that I want to show before we get into how do I build my content machine, which I'm sure a lot of you are wondering, it is this Engagers and ICP tool. And this is one of the most valuable pieces that I've built into this tool. What it does is it's constantly taking all of my engagement on LinkedIn and then scoring it against my ICP and uncovering who they are so that I can start to create messages that go out to them, start to engage with them. And it's awesome because they've already been primed with the content that I'm writing. So these aren't cold outbound messages. These are messages to individuals that have already enjoyed the content that I'm writing. Or maybe they disagreed with some of it, but at least they know the name. And so that goes a long way. And you can do a lot with this. And if I wanted to, I can click into this and actually go into the profiles and actually get information on the various scores as well. There's also this prospects here, and it gives me a little bit more information on actually those that are engaging with the creators I'm watching. So if I wanted to look into just going back to that leaderboard that I was showing earlier, most of those individuals are posting the same type of content that I'm posting, right? It's AI marketing. And so they're probably getting in front of my ICP as well. And so this gives me a look at the individuals that are engaging with their content because I know that they're interested in that content. So then I can connect with those folks. This is also a recent addition to the tool, but that's essentially the demo or showcase that I wanted to share on the content machine before actually getting into how it's all coming together and how it was all built. I'll pause there if there's any questions before getting into the actual build.
No,
I think
let's
we're
jump
good.
into
I
it.
see you nodding your head no, Tony. So we'll just get
Yeah, let's
straight
jump into
into
it.
it. I
Yeah.
think everyone wants to know. So I showcased the features, but these are the features that I wanted in the content machine. And you'll see that these may be beneficial to you. They may also not be, right? And I mentioned this earlier, the content machine that you build should be bespoke to you. And that's the beauty of it, because a lot of SaaS subscriptions for maybe a briefing or a research scraper are going to be just that, and maybe a few other features that you don't need. But the beauty of building your own is you can build the features that you want exactly how you want. The stack to the questions earlier include Claude Code, Apify's API. I use Apollo for enrichment on individual data if I need to enrich further. Railway is what hosts the actual tool. I'm using Google Auth to log in, and that's about it. There's not too many tools that plug into this. What it looked like, and the biggest piece of advice that I can give when building this is don't go after the moon and every feature. start off with one feature. And to start off with that feature, if you don't know what it is, look at what you're doing. Take observation of what your day to day looks like when you're writing content, where you're ideating, and where you're getting stuck or maybe spending a lot of time. For me, it was that briefing. I spent so much of my days just scrolling LinkedIn to try to get inspiration on what I should write. So that's what I wanted to build first, which was that first tab that I showcased. And simply tell Claude that's what you want to build. I'm actually going to go into some of the prompts that you can use, but you'll just tell Claude that's what you'd like. And then you're going to go back and forth with Claude on what it needs. It'll ask you questions, etc. Again, going to deep dive a little bit more on that later. So I'm going to go past that on what you need to do, what you should do after building that first feature, which is just living with it. Use the feature, see what you like, see what you don't like, optimize and refine it. And that's how you're going to build your ultimate tool, right? And for me, that was the work of 6 months of just on a day that I would find that I needed a certain feature and I thought that it would be useful, I went ahead and built it. The way that it works in a little bit more detail is Apify is essentially running all of the scraping on LinkedIn. It's what is pulling all of the posts that you saw in the tool. And from there, it feeds all of that into the tool, which was built again with Claude Code. And I want to also mention that I'm not an engineer, as I mentioned earlier. I'm definitely far from it. I'm a marketer by trade, founder now, but if you're intimidated by Claude Code, don't be. Just go in and start prompting it, and you're going to be able to build some really cool things without a really technical background. And you actually do get more technical throughout the build. And what you then do from the build is Claude Code will actually run it on your local device. It's called local host. And that's where I was actually running this tool for the majority of the first couple of months until I wanted to actually deploy it onto GitHub and Railway. And again, Railway hosts everything, it connects directly into Claude Code. And then that's what hosts it on the subdomain of my company. Now, the beauty of that is that you have it anywhere. So you don't have to be logged into Claude to use the tool. I can be on another device, I can be on my phone, and it's always going to be running because it's hosted on Railway, which is why I wanted to do it that way. Although it's not a must have, and especially not a must have in the beginning, you can definitely get away with just localhost. This one's a little grainy, but this is just a little bit more of a deep dive on what I shared on the previous slide, which was Apify being the tool that ingests all of my posts and all of the posts in my niche and vertical. And it's also looking at everyone that engaged. Apollo then takes it and will enrich all of the data on the individuals. And then Claude will score those so that I know who's engaging and who actually fits my ICP, which powers a lot of the different features that I had built. And it's so important to add your definitions. And what I mean by that is, what does top mean? Because otherwise, if you just say surface my top post, it's very ambiguous. And I learned through the process of building this that I needed to be more specific to get the outputs that were going to be the best outputs that I could get. And so for me, top actually meant comments and saves instead of likes and impressions. And what does overdue look like, right? As far as a pillar that I'm writing about. Anytime I haven't written about a pillar in 2 weeks, it's considered overdue. And then, of course, my ICP, that all gets fed into a file that Claude will then save and store so that it works across all of the features that you're adding. So that if I were to add a new feature today, it has all of that foundational context and those definitions. And then lastly, it pushes all of that into the dashboard and screen that you saw, which makes it really easy to navigate and use all of these tools in one simple UI. If I were starting today, and this is what I did to build all of this, these are the steps I would take. So you want to start off, if you haven't built anything in Claude Code yet, by making a folder. make a folder on your desktop or in your documents, call it Content Machine. You can call it Content Machine 2000, and then and then connect your Claude Code instance for that project into that folder. It's so important because it's going to organize everything for that project into one very easy to use, or centralized rather, place. And then describe what you want. And in my case, I described that I wanted a daily briefing, and I told it a little bit about myself, what my goals were, and I basically just gave it a word dump on what I wanted. The more words and the more specific you can be, the better, rather than being vague with your prompts. And that just goes for anything when it comes to Claude. And then just let it start building. It's going to ask you questions, as Claude likes to do. It's a very curious creature. It's awesome because it does that. And it will then start to refine based off of the answers that you give it. And it'll ask you for the data that it needs. And in my case, it said it needed certain APIs like Claude's API, which is very important to note that Claude Code is different from Claude's API. You do need to add Claude's developer API key into the project for it to actually work on a hosted website or even on localhost like I had it. And so it uses Claude's API, it uses again Apify's API. And so those keys are added in. And then within a half day of it going back and forth, and this isn't a half day of me just in Claude, I was doing other things while it built. I was able to actually get the first version, and I tested it on localhost, and I continued to build on localhost for probably the first couple of months at minimum before I even decided to host it on GitHub and Railway. But you want to just get to that aha moment. You want to get to that moment of, wow, this is useful, as quick as possible, which is why I really recommend starting with one feature and building from there.
Is there one feature that you feel like would be low-hanging fruit for someone who's new to this completely to start with?
I think some sort of daily briefing, something that just surfaces the insights that you would be manually collecting by scrolling. So if you can minimize your scroll and time on the actual platform on LinkedIn, and it gives you patterns and highlights on the type of content to write, that's, at least for me, that was a huge blocker, just having writer's block and not knowing exactly what to write. It may be different for others, but I think having a briefing tab would be the lowest hanging fruit that anyone can start with.
Got it. Cool. That's a good tip for you founders out there who don't know what to write about. And then just to double click into that, and I know you mentioned this, but I think we should repeat it. Are you having Claude monitor your entire feed of everyone you follow, or a specific list of people that you want to glean insights from?
A little bit of both. So I have Claude and Apify scraping all of the posts from those that I have on my watch list that you saw in that leaderboard,
Yep.
because they're the ones that are posting great content that I have to keep my eyes on to just get inspiration on maybe what's top of mind for them and what's resonating with their audience. And then as the second layer, I also have Apify simply looking at my vertical, which is AI marketing, and all of the posts from creators that maybe I haven't even heard of that are writing about that type of content. Because oftentimes there's going to be so much more content outside of a standard watch list that you would build. So it does a little bit of both.
Cool. I have one other question. There's a bunch that's coming through, but let me ask one question and we could keep going and then address questions. So since we're on this particular page or this slide, you're giving the steps, which is super helpful to the founders and people on this session. What was your thought process with building an actual interface using Claude Code versus just using Claude Cowork and
Mhm.
doing scheduled tasks to do some of these things? What made you decide to
Mhm.
create an actual app?
I actually take that question for every project that I build. So I'm glad folks are asking that. I like to use Claude Cowork for very A to B tasks. So maybe they're reminders, Maybe they are one manual task that I'm trying to take off my plate, like exporting something daily. But when it comes to wanting to hook in APIs and create a visual studio and host it and just get a lot more customization out of it, Claude Code is going to be Claude Cowork 9, if not 10 times out of 10. You just get a lot more optionality. Sometimes in Claude Cowork, there's just no connector either. There's no MCP that's supported. And so with Claude Code, you're able to basically hook up 100% of the web into it because most, if not all, reputable slash sort of companies like an Apify will have an API that wouldn't be able to be used on like a Claude Cowork. So I probably spend more of my time on Claude Code in general, just because there's so much more flexibility with what you can build.
Perfect.
Cool. And I did promise that I would give a little bit of insight into what I would do and what I wouldn't do. This is going back to just being specific or even doing like a word dump if you need to on what it is you're looking for. And so this was a problem that I was running into when I was first building, not even the content machine, but other projects, which was being too vague, being too ambiguous. And so it's so important when you build out this machine to be as specific as possible to your specific use case so that the tool can be bespoke to you. Because otherwise, if you wanted something that's a little bit more standard, there's probably dozens of SaaS products on the market. But the whole reason to build something like this in the first place is to get something that's unique to your use case. So here are just a couple examples on how I became better at defining what I needed to define when I was building. And a closer look at this was a sample chat here, which was something that I didn't actually say, but would have if I could go back and was building the Apify connection into the tool. And for me, I would say something like Apify can pull every post I've published, tag each one with one of my 5 pillars, then show me which pillar has gone longest without a post, right? Without one, and ask me clarifying questions first. Claude will typically do this, but it's always good. I like to add it just in case it doesn't, on having it ask me more questions before it starts building, because you'll find that you'll just save a lot of time and it'll probably give you more clarity on exactly what you're looking to build. So the questions that it may ask are like, should I call the Claude API to categorize each post, do repost, reset the clock, etc. And then I would say, yes, use the Claude API, repost, don't reset it. And Claude will say that it built it and hopefully come back with something that's working. But that's just an example of how it looks like when I'm building with Claude. It's very much back and forth. It's very much asking me questions, and it helps. It really does help in providing clarity, not only to Claude, but to you when you're doing this build.
And just if I can add a
And
comment, for a lot
mhm.
of people who are attending this webinar who are, again, new to using AI tools, it's okay. We all have to start from somewhere. That's probably one of the biggest things you could utilize, which is prompt Claude to ask you questions. There's even a thing, that feature called Ask User Question. If you just make sure that Claude asks you to clarify things, it helps a lot. Yeah, for those of you who are kind of new to that, definitely use that frequently.
Spot on. Helps so much. And this wouldn't be a true showcase without showing a couple of the items that I fumbled. And I really showed this because it's something that's so important to building, is that it's never going to be a straight A to B destination. You're going to go through valleys that are maybe uncharted, or you're going to hit some road bumps. And so I wanted to share some of the issues that I actually ran into. First one being that the scraper broke at one point. And so, what I always recommend when something breaks is to screenshot what you're seeing. Show Claude exactly what the errors are. Show Claude what is broken. And it's often going to be better than typing in or speaking with like a whisper flow, speaking what the actual issue is. I paste so many screenshots into Claude, and it helps me fix the issues that I run into. At one point, Claude hallucinated, although it's getting better at this, it still does it. And so I always like to call that out, that it's not always going to be 100% on what it's building initially. And so you do need to spot check it. You do need to double check to make sure that it's outputting exactly what you need. At one point, it invented some fields that I didn't ask for, or maybe I had approved it and it just went along its way. And that's another piece that I had to go back and revert. And then I spoke about this a little bit at the start, but I do really urge everyone building something like this to start with one amazing feature rather than 3 to 5 half-baked features, because it's going to confuse Claude. It's going to cause a lot of issues that maybe could have been avoided if you just refined and built one to start. So those are just a couple of the mistakes and fumbles that hopefully you can avoid through some of my mistakes and learnings. But now that everything is built, this is what it looks like for me. I built my following again from 0 to about 30,000 plus in the last 2.5 years. It's driven so much of my pipeline for my startup. And my days used to be hours on founder led content. And now it's really condensed to about an hour a day, if that, because of this tool. It allows me to see everything in one dashboard. I don't need to scroll for hours, which was really what took most of my mornings. And then I can write content based off of the inspiration that I see on the dashboard. And I can start to engage with those that are commenting or even sending me direct messages on LinkedIn. And that's just like a throughout the day sort of task. And then at the end of every day, this tool is looking and scoring all of the engagement to see if there's anyone that I maybe missed, maybe someone that liked the post but didn't comment that I should reach out to that's within my ICP to spark a conversation. But that's what a day-to-day looks like for me today. Just going back to what I didn't build, and I know we're a little running short on time. I want to answer some more questions in the case that there are any burning ones in the feed there. But I do want to just, again, double down on the fact that I don't think anyone should build a tool to actually write, because that's where you're going to lose all of your edge and your unique voice. I see so many creators, and I think even Tony Robbins had posted on LinkedIn within the last week, and a lot of people called him out because it was very clearly AI generated content. And people are able to just spot this now. And so really spend the time writing, automate everything else for sure, but keep yours unique. And then I also didn't want to automate anything that had to do with posting. I want to make sure the accounts and everyone building have accounts that are protected and aren't using your own LinkedIn account to run automations. And then lastly, notifications. I wanted a place to go to. I didn't want another notification on my phone. So this was deliberately built into a dashboard that didn't send me anything. I'm going to gloss over some of this. I think, Tony, maybe we should leave the rest if there are any other questions. I think I only had, it was just that. But
A lot of
we
people
want to
have
leave the
questions
rest.
about how much this all costs. So
Oh, okay, perfect.
yeah.
You'll see here, I actually have this that hooks into Apify and gives me how much it's spending on a day-to-day basis, so I can keep an eye on that. But it runs about $30 a month. The biggest cost is Apify. And I think Tony mentioned it's a Mucker perk, so maybe you get an even better deal and it'll be half that. But yeah, that's what the cost looks like to run this on a daily basis.
Cool.
But that is all.
If you don't mind keeping that up, yeah, the slide.
Sure. We'll
I
go
think
right
there's
back.
a couple of things. Final slides. Okay, so we have just a few minutes. All right, let me try to go through some of the key questions here. All right, let's see. Oof. All right, lots of other random questions. One, can you apply this to other social channels other than LinkedIn, like X?
For sure. I spend most of my time on LinkedIn just because of my ICP being on there, more so than on X. And I've just doubled down on that platform, but this certainly works for other platforms. I'm actually using this for Substack. And so what I didn't show, because this was a little bit more LinkedIn heavy of a webinar, was what what the content machine does is it takes every email that subscribes to my Substack, it uses Apollo to enrich it, and it gives me data on if they match my ICP and if it's someone that I should reach out to.
Got it. Okay. Someone asked a question going back to the beginning about we were talking using your personal LinkedIn profile versus company. And you mentioned now you're mostly posting on your personal profile. So the question is, what would be the use of a company LinkedIn page then? Is there even a need for it?
I
What,
think having some social proof more than anything is the reason I would have the LinkedIn company page up so that you can post case studies and achievements, etc. Because when someone does go to your company page, and they will, it's good to have content on there, but I definitely wouldn't prioritize it on a day to day because most of the pipeline will be built off of your founder led account.
Got it. Okay. We're up on time. Let me ask one, couple more, and then we'll wrap up. So, any recommendations on what kind of posts on LinkedIn to utilize? Meaning, should you include things like single image or carousel or video content, or just is it plainly text?
The best performing content is typically text only or text with image. And that has tried to crack video for the longest time. And I think user behavior on there is to just not have audio on, and most don't use it as like a TikTok or maybe something that's much more native for video. And so video just doesn't get much engagement. If someone here cracks it, power to you. And I'd love to hear your webinar at some point and get some feedback. But yeah, the first two that I mentioned are the best.
Cool. And then the last question, and if we could flip to the last slide, I think there should be one conclusion. Okay, so last question. For those that feel like building their own app or content machine like you did via Claude Code is overkill for them, is there like a off-the-shelf tool that you've seen that works perhaps as okay? Or are there any other methods that you would recommend if no one wants to go the full content
Mhm.
machine build like you did?
Two tools that I've actually used before building this when I first got started are Taplio and Hypefury. Those are two that plug into LinkedIn and can give you a lot of the insights that are within the content machine. Although I will say not bespoke and there are limitations, but those are two very good off the shelf tools.
Cool. Awesome. All right. We're going to wrap up as a conclusion. We do these every month. If you are new to our Mucker Growth Series sessions, and if you want to stay up to date, definitely go to Mucker and subscribe. We'll let you know when the next one will come up. If there are topics that you are particularly interested in, we're always open to new ideas. We have a backlog of different things that we want to go into. And so pretty much the next several months of these sessions have been spoken for. So I won't spoil it or give you any teasers. You guys will just have to keep up to date. But we do a lot of content like this to help founders. Jonathan's email address is right there if you want to reach out to him. And again, he's not asking me to do this. Definitely go and subscribe to his newsletter because there's a lot of good content there. So again, for those of you who weren't here in the beginning, it's AI Marketer. Is that correct, Jonathan? Just make sure.
Correct. The AI marketer on Substack.
The AI Marketer. Go to Substack and search
Mhm.
for the AI Marketer and subscribe to his stuff. And then lastly, again, if you are a founder and need help, we not only invest, write a check, but we sit beside you and help guide you through stuff like this. So go to mucker.com if you are a founder and are looking for additional funding or want to go through an accelerator. Anyhow, thanks for all of you who stuck around to the very end. Sorry we couldn't get through every single question, but I think we got through most of it. Again, don't be shy and reach out to Jonathan or myself. Jonathan, thanks for doing this with us. I'm going to ping you offline about some other things, but thanks for sharing your content machine with us today. And I hope that everyone got some value out of today's session and are inspired to build your own. We'll see everyone at the next one. Take care. Bye.
Thank you all.